Okay, well, welcome, Ali and Jess. Thank you for coming to talk to me today ahead of our Botanical Book Club session. So, we're very excited to hear all about the new book, Naturalistic Flowers, A Year of Plants, Places, and People. But today I want to go through a little bit more about you guys, your world of flowers, and of course, a little bit about the book as well. And it's quite fun to have both of you on the call and to get to know a little bit about the sister working relationship too. So um, we'll talk a bit about that as well. So first of all, tell me a little bit about both of you and how you both kind of fell into the flower world. How did that journey begin for you?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, well, it
You.
started, it started with me. It's all my fault.
It's all ours.
I started arranging flowers as a hobby, probably 12 or 13 years ago, and quite an unlikely hobby because I'm not particularly sort of arty or crafty. That's more you, isn't it? But yeah, I picked it up and started practicing at home, making arrangements. I was really inspired by some old Constance Spry books that I found, very old school with the beautiful black and white photographs of arrangements. And I was basically trying to replicate that style, I guess, because what I'd known of floristry before that was just going into a flower shop and buying like a bouquet wrapped in cellophane. Like I didn't have any concept of what an arrangement was. And so this was an entirely new world for me. And yeah, it was back at the beginning of Instagram. It was still very much in like the blog era. So there were some really great blogs that I used to read of people doing flowers around the world, and just got completely hooked. And I started doing a traditional course, which in this country is the way that you can gain a qualification in floristry. So I think there's like several levels, and it's kind of like a diploma part-time study. And I started doing that, and I did the first year, and it was very interesting in terms of technique. It was very technical, but I just really loathed the creativity side of it. It was very formulaic. It was quite traditional and very sort of rigid, I guess. You had to make exactly what the teacher made, and you were judged on, how identical it was to the demo arrangement. And there wasn't really any room for creative expression. So I abandoned that after the first year. And then, yeah, started doing weddings. And Jess was kind of, we originally thought that the business was going to be flowers and illustration, because Jess is a really great botanical illustrator. And that was like our concept in the beginning, and it didn't quite work out that way.
Quite work out that way. We put a lot of groundwork into doing it that way. I mean, we had like our van, branded on the side, sort of flowers and stationery, and I was going to get a letterpress machine and like be in the back, letter pressing, and Al was going to be doing the flowers. And we thought we could like do the same. So if somebody was getting married, they could have the same weddings, the same flowers on their wedding stationery that would be in their eventual.
It's such a good idea.
It's such a good idea.
Maybe I can see it coming back. It's coming.
Yeah, maybe one day. But they're two totally different businesses, and in actual fact, in order to make a business work, it took so much more than any of us either of us really anticipated. So gradually the flowers just kind of took over, and we ended up concentrating on that. But you never know.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, it's funny how things work out. So I have to ask you then, Jess, can you remember the first time or the first arrangement you ever did?
Well, yeah, because Al was she was doing it as a hobby, and then was doing this training. And so which she then abandoned. But so when we set up the business, I needed her to show me how to arrange flowers because I'd never done it before.
Yeah.
So I think we were in like your tiny bedsit flat in Oxford.
Yeah.
And I think you showed me how to make a spiral bouquet.
I remember that. I have a photo of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was definitely some beers. I feel like there was beers
Yeah.
involved. Yeah. And flowers.
That just sounds fantastic. I mean, that's the dream. I've got two sisters, so this like sisterly
Oh,
in
yeah,
the room making flowers, seeing what
yeah,
happens. Yeah,
yeah,
familiar to me.
yeah. It's great.
And then what was your very first paid flower job? Because you went straight into a business. You didn't go and work for anyone else or anything like that. You
No,
just, yeah.
yeah, we just blindly,
Naively.
not very
Yeah.
naively, just I don't know. With the power of hindsight, it's amazing how confident you can be knowing so little.
I know,
But
wonderful.
maybe that's a good thing.
It is.
I think our first paid job,
Well, it was
yeah,
friends initially, so it was very much like mates rates.
yeah,
Give us a few $100 and we'll see what we can do, kind of thing.
yeah,
And we spent all of that on flowers. Obviously,
yeah,
we didn't pay ourselves for ages, and we were lucky in that we had, our friends at the time were, in the
that
age where
age, yeah.
everyone seemed to be getting married, and we would do friends' weddings, and then a cousin would get married and we'd be recommended, and it was very like small and word of mouth and quite manageable at the time. But we did have our first like professional job was through a colleague, and it was just it was so stressful. We didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know how to work together. And
wedding, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we made all these centerpieces. We bought like 10 times as many flowers.
An entire flower market of flowers.
Yeah, and we made like 10 centerpieces, and they all fell over in the van. We ended up just having an argument and like crying and being like, we're never doing this again.
We lost the address. Our phones died. We didn't have a physical map. We were in the countryside at a hired van. We were both very scared of driving a van. It was a complete disaster. I mean, the wedding wasn't like they had lovely flowers.
We pulled it round.
You pulled it round. Oh, thank God.
No, the flowers were fine. It was us. It was our side that was just. It's just so there's so many moving parts, and and you would just have no idea until you're doing that kind of job how stressful it is, how time pressurized, all the tiny little nuanced decisions that make it run smoothly, which we had no experience of, and you're learning on the job.
Yeah.
But it's a good baptism of fire because you learn very quickly, I think.
And what on earth made you do it again?
I think actually our dad said to us, if you could do this, because our first studio was in our parents' garage in Oxford under their house, and it was a tiny little space, and we converted it with a sink and a table, and that was it. It was really tiny. And so we were doing the flowers in and out of their house, and we came back after this incredibly stressful job, and sat down, and Dad said, okay, so this has been, a day, but if you were being paid for this job properly, would you do it again? If you could make a living. And we just looked at each other, we were like, absolutely, we do it again tomorrow. And then we just realized that actually, despite all of it was like the best day because you solved problems and you were out and about and we were working together and the flowers were amazing. And
it felt like
if I could make a living from it, and actually make it work, hell yeah, do it every day.
I love that. You guys, a bit of a family business. Have you got your parents helping out with you in the van sometimes?
Yeah, they help out a lot. I mean, nowadays they help out a lot with childcare, which goes a long way to helping a small business work. But yeah, they've both run their own businesses. They've been incredibly supportive and a big part of what we've done. Yeah.
Amazing. So a lot of what you guys do is not just about the flower arranging, but now it's also a bit about growing and, growing your own stuff as well. And you've got a garden. Tell me about your garden at the moment and what's growing in there right now.
So the garden so our business is in London, in our studios in Shepherd's Bush in West London, and our garden is in Hampshire, which is a county west of London. So it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours from the studio, in the middle of the countryside, very, very different to the very urban surroundings of our studio. It's a very small plot. It's just under half an acre. So it's really, really small. And it's divided into I mean, into
small.
our garden is a bit small, but like, if you were flower farming or something, that just sounds absolutely minuscule, and it is. It's very, it's people have domestic gardens which are bigger than that. It's quite a small space, and it's very heavily planted, so it's very kind of compact. But yeah, it's divided into different areas. We grow different groupings of plants. We're really interested in this idea of carving it up into like garden rooms, so that you have different plants that would grow naturally together in different climates or different soil conditions. So we have, more of a rose garden, which is lots of roses and sort of Gertrude Jekyll type planting with lots of underplanting and perennials, quite English country garden. Then we have a prairie section, which is lots of ornamental grasses and drought tolerant perennials and things like that. We have a sort of half shady area where we grow, well, we call it wabi sabi. So it's the sort of beauty and imperfection, and there's a slightly sort of Japanese feel to that area of the garden. There's a kitchen garden section. And then the idea is to take the plants from those sections and make arrangements that work to get the flowers work together because they've been grown together in those conditions in that kind of garden setting. So it's slightly experimental in terms of being a cutting garden. We're quite interested in making it very beautiful aesthetically to be there and to be inspired by it, but also practical so that you can also cut from it and use the material as cut flower material. And it's just constantly this learning process. Like every year we change it slightly and things don't work, or things do work, and we concentrate on that. So we grow a really, really wide range of perennials, annuals, shrubs, like so many different varieties, but like a really small amount of each, essentially.
And what's going on at the moment?
Right now, we've just had the kind
spring.
of May gap where we're kind of in the middle of it, which is this horrible time in spring when all the April stuff is over, all the tulips and the fritillaria and those kind of flowering bulbs are over, and you're waiting for roses and peonies and the sweet peas to like really get going, and you have this weird lull in the garden where you're like, where is everything? And everything's green. Everything's very green, but there isn't a lot of flowering, so you have to be quite inventive, and you have to. Al's always like, there's no focal flowers.
But it always ends up being, it's so interesting, the limitation, caused by like enforced restraint, basically, because
by seasonality.
And actually the best designs come from that, I think.
Exactly.
100%, 100%. And I think that also what you guys show in your book too is about how in any environment that you're in, you can find something to make something beautiful with, and it's the unexpected ingredients often that really shine through.
Totally.
But speaking of your garden, so I think last time we spoke, Ali, you were talking about your gardener who had previously worked at Sissinghurst, and this is especially interesting to our book club members because we read a book a while ago that was about the garden at Sissinghurst, so it was quite interesting, and I wonder what have you learned, like having a gardener, because I imagine at the beginning you were gardening yourself most of the time, but then that transition to having a gardener, what have you learned from them and how has it kind of changed your approach to gardening?
It's been a massive change, actually. It's quite recent. So he came on board at the beginning of this year, full time. And prior to that, we've had the garden for coming up to 10 years. And I've done most of it myself, which is sounds like it doesn't work because I live in London. But essentially, it's just been a lot of hard work and a lot of going between the two. And we've had seasonal help, but having somebody there 5 days a week and really kind of taking it under his wing and being so skilled, he's skilled in a way that I'm not because I'm self-taught and I've never had any training. I've made it up as I've gone along. And you could just notice in all the things that he's doing, all the details, that he is skilled in what he's doing. He's faster, he's more precise. He just has a way of doing things that is, I can just tell has come from being at Sissinghurst and being around other professional gardeners there and learning there. So we're still coming into the season here. So we'll see. We keep joking with him. He's like, if the beds are bare, I'm going to get the sack. But basically, we'll see how this season pans out of having somebody doing things slightly differently to how I would do them. And then with you working with him.
Yeah, for me, it's such a joy because we actually met through, we did a series of projects at Sissinghurst where we were collaborating with him because he headed up the cutting garden there. And we had to work on these winter projects where we used things from the garden that he'd dried. And so that's kind of how we developed a working relationship. And from my side, he's really interested in flower arranging.
Yeah.
So
he loves
flower, and he's really good. And he's not just a gardener. He's looking at the plants for cutting. He wants to understand how they will arrange in a vase, how they will behave once they're cut. So that collaboration for me is really exciting because he's constantly coming up with ideas and saying, why don't we try this? And it's such a collaborative way of working, which is really exciting. It's really exciting.
Having a third person join what is essentially a two-person but tiny business who is knowledgeable in plants is just so exciting because you can have all these conversations about plants and new ideas, and it's just such it feels like AESME, it's just really important to AESME to have that because we are all about plants, ultimately the teaching in the school and in the book, it's all about the materials, it's all about the plants. So he's such a massive addition. And like Al said, there's the gardening, but there's also the cutting. And sometimes you can have somebody who's a gardener and people are afraid to cut from their gardens because they're worried about the effect it's going to have on the plants. And he doesn't think like that. He's not precious. You could be precious and be like, well, we don't want to cut that because it'll ruin the display. But he doesn't think like that. He's very much thinking about the cutting. So it's really great. It's a really collaborative thing that we've got going now.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that. That yes, you definitely there's two approaches to the garden.
Yeah. And that's with the book when we visited specifically gardens, because a lot of them weren't really gardens. Some of them were very much gardens. There is a nervousness to for us approaching people and saying, can we cut from your garden? And for a lot of people, it kind of freaks them out a bit because somebody might go trampling off into the beds and ruin things or cut, if you cut a stem badly, you could damage the plant. So it's a real exercise in trust, allowing somebody to cut from your garden, I think.
100%. My Ikebana teacher, her studio was in a garden and she'd allow us to go out, if we needed something extra to the garden to cut something. But she took us out for the first time, and explained how to cut.
Yeah, totally. It's a skill in its own right.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the book. So first of all, before we go into it, whose idea was it, Ali or Jess? Who wanted to do the book?
I think we both always wanted to do a book since day one. Yeah.
I did. I tried to be a writer at one point, and I did a master's in creative writing, and so I've always written, and I've always been into writing. And I think right from day one, I suddenly thought, because I tried to write fiction, and I'm not very good at writing fiction. I'm not very good at writing dialogue and things like that. But once I discovered flowers and started to research floral design and design theory and plants, and made the connection with horticulture, there just seemed to be this entire world that opened up to me. And having something, a specialism to write about, I think for me was so exciting. And so it's always something I've wanted to do, is publish a book. Like, it's always been a dream of mine. But I think we've always wanted to do it right from the beginning.
Kind of fantasized about
we did actually try and do it. I don't know, right back at the beginning. We'd only been going
pre-COVID,
and we got an agent in New York who went out to all different publishers, and we had some really great meetings with great publishers, and nobody wanted it. And now I'm so glad that it didn't happen at that time in that way.
It wouldn't have been this book, that's for sure.
We were not experienced enough to write a book at that point. We were getting ahead of ourselves, and I think waiting for the right time is very important.
Gosh, it's somehow like that sometimes. The universe just makes it happen. Perfect timing. Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so tell us, for the book club members, tell us a bit about the book and what you'd like us to know before we read it. Is there anything that we should know and consider as we're going through it?
That's a good question. Well, it's a journey. I think you can dip in and out of it if you wanted to. It's not because we shot in so many different places, we traveled to all these different places and arranged flowers in different places, essentially. But some of them are in different countries, so we kind of swing a little bit between seasons. So it's not a kind of very chronological, spring, summer, autumn, winter in England. So you can kind of dip in and out if you wanted to. But each chapter is essentially centered around a place and what we noticed there, and trying to draw your attention to these magical little moments in this place, and then making arrangements with materials that we found there.
I think the whole thing really was an experiment in, can you evoke a sense of place through arranging flowers? It's an interesting question, and I think that's definitely something that we would love people to try out and do when they're traveling and when they're going to different places, or even not on location necessarily, but just next time you visit a garden or next time you go to a beautiful wild space, can you bring that back into your own studio or your own home and kind of create something that is inspired by that moment? And it's all about the sort of the spark of inspiration, which I think is such an interesting thing to explore. And we knew right from the beginning we didn't want to do a sort of a how-to book per se, but we wanted to come up with a sort of a set of principles that can be applied by anyone, anywhere. And just as it brings it back to the fun of it. Why do we arrange flowers in the first place? It's to evoke the season, it's to make a connection with the natural world, and it's for creative expression, and it's very individual. And I hope that what people will get from this book is this sense of just really getting out there and finding interesting things and trying, experimenting. That's what we really hope, that it'll spark people to be like, oh God, I can't wait to just get my snips and get out into a, even if it's just some urban foraging, like, it's just so great. It's so fun. And
especially in an age of like Instagram and copying and, us seeing these images all the time and stuff. It's an antidote to that. It's just be in an environment, open your eyes, look around. And like Al said, it's not a how-to. It's not a you can go and like replicate this recipe exactly. It's more like what's happening where you are. What could you create? Because each one is a moment in time. It will never be created again. The arrangements that she made, like, they won't happen again. They were just on that day those things happened to be there. The weather was the way it was, you know, it just happened to be that arrangement, but it's gone now. And now it's like, okay, so what do you do next?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's so much the joy of flower arranging, is the spontaneity. Not always. And for us, it was such a pleasure because we've been designing for events for years, and we have a very set brief and we have a set budget, and there are all these parameters that we're working within. And so to do something where the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
You have a certain number of hours and it's like, go, make as many arrangements as you can and try and evoke this place. And, you know, that's
fun.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's fun.
Absolutely. So, like, what about it? I mean, that's what we're all about in Flower Club as well. We do Ikebana Club, which is all just, you know, foraging and then making whatever you want for no commercial reason, just for the
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the theme of like arranging with flowers where they are in that space from that space is really interesting. And what were some of the unexpected like materials that you found along the way that you wouldn't normally arrange with, like not your peonies or roses, but what did you find that you were like, oh, I like that. I'd like to, you know, use that again in my arrangement.
So many.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna have a complete mental blank now. Well, I think, I mean, there were so many things on every shoot, and we actually started the book. I should preface this by saying that we started the book with kind of a slightly different idea or concept for the book, which was arranging for interior locations. So we wanted to go and just make arrangements from our garden in beautiful, interesting interior spaces.
Okay,
And it
yeah.
didn't work out. It didn't work out like that. And I think the first shoot, which is in Suffolk, we went and stayed at our friend Kristen Perez, her cottage in Aldeburgh. And it was the beginning of the project. And we took all of our own flowers and were making arrangements in this place. And it just felt really off. And we kept going for these walks, and we were sort of testing out the idea, and we were finding like the wild fennel along the roadside was so amazing. And we were just so drawn to these materials that were so of that place, but that we hadn't brought with us. So, and it was a completely different, it was like, oh, okay, this is a complete pivot now.
Yeah.
So we're just now focusing on place. And then all the way through, I mean, just so many, we went to Norfolk and we did a shoot where we went sailing through the salt marshes, and we found plants that grow wild in this area of just outstanding natural beauty. It's incredible. And it was all like sea lavender and all maritime plants. And that was so fun because we would find like relations of our own plants that we grow in our garden, but the maritime version. So there are lots of really interesting things on that shoot. And I think Surge Hill as well, which is one of the latter shoots in the book in autumn.
Actually, that's the cover. That was
the cover image. Yeah, that was extraordinary because it's Tom Stewart Smith and Sue Stewart Smith have created a garden where it's called the Plant Library, and they have, I don't know how many thousands of plants, but they're planted in a really interesting way. It's basically a library, but with plants. So they're all,
like
all
a
the
grid system.
Yeah, planted in a grid system, and there's like a QR code so you can scan and find out the different varieties, and really interesting, unusual, amazing perennials. And that was really fascinating. And there was a particular thing, I'm going to pronounce it. I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. Anyway, if you find that chapter, the Surge Hill chapter, there's an arrangement in a wicker vase with this beautiful flowering shrub, arching shrub. And it's just the most incredible shapes. And it was I had never seen it before. And then since then, and this happens so much throughout the book, was we would notice something and arrange something, and then now I see it everywhere. I'm like, how did I not notice this before? And Jess talks about it in the kind of the intro that she wrote about plant blindness, and how you go, before discovering this whole amazing world of plants, if you're new to it, so exciting because you realize how you've been passing through the world and just not seeing the natural beauty that is just all around us everywhere. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
It wasn't
That
totally.
answers my question and more. And we had this session this morning for Nature Club, which was with this amazing, talented woman, Emily Smith, who's in Japan. And her specialty is researching about micro seasons and foraging. And so
Okay.
there's so many micro seasons, it's changing like every single week or
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah.
she's going out there making these films about the time at that minute, and all of these plants that were in her presentation this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before. And then even this afternoon, I'm seeing them everywhere, and I'm like, yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
yes,
It's
but I have
amazing.
never heard that plant blindness.
Yeah. Plant blindness. Yeah.
Now I'm going to use that. That's
Yeah. It's a thing because it is a whole other world. Like once you've clocked onto it,
yeah,
and you're just, we live in London, but there's loads of lovely front gardens and parks, and you're walking around and suddenly you're like, I know what that is. I know what that is. I know what that tree is. I know why it looks like that. And before, if you weren't privy to that, you would just have walked around with blinkers on and what, what
Yeah,
you would just see the world completely
yeah.
differently.
It is actually the definition of enriching. Like it is
Yeah.
so enriching to our
Because
lives
it's
to
just
know.
adding all this information and beauty to your life. Yeah,
yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
absolutely. Um, okay, next question. If someone if someone had a garden filled with all these lovely flowers, etc., and they want to learn how to decorate their house with them, I think sometimes, as you said, people have the fear of cutting their
Yeah.
gardens. And
Yeah.
they're like, how could I possibly take that and make it more beautiful inside?
Yeah.
Or what would you say to someone with a lovely garden who's a bit nervous about cutting and bringing the flowers inside?
Um, well, from a gardening perspective and a cutting perspective, I would say um, don't worry about the plants. Most of them, like a good prune, or if they're flowering shrubs or they're annuals, then it's actually going to benefit them. If you cut, you're going to get more flowers. You're going to keep them a little bit healthier. Just take what you need. Don't take too much, especially if it's something wild or you're foraging and things like that. Just be sensitive to the plant itself, and only take what you need. And then from an arranging perspective, what would you say?
From an arranging perspective, I would say just experiment as much as possible throughout the garden, throughout the season. So you're constantly trying different things, but also, so the way we design is quite, it's quite different to the way a lot of people might design for events, in that everything is planned way ahead of time because they're buying things that are from the wholesale market, and there is to a certain extent a guarantee that they will be around or something similar. We don't sort of guarantee any specific varieties. We work within usually a color palette, so a brief that is centered around a color palette or a particular shape or texture that the client is gravitating towards. And I'll do a walk around maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the event, and then a week before, and I come up with recipes for each type of arrangement. So we very much recipe write for all of our designs, and that comes from, so usually starting with a color palette. So have a color palette in mind, and then just walk around. And I think we did this for the book. There was this stage of just walking around and looking. Don't start cutting. Don't try and sort of jump ahead. Just really give yourself the time to walk around, look at the shapes, look at the colors, and something, or sometimes lots of different things, will jump out at you. And it's very useful sometimes, I think, to start with your kind of hero. So choose like a hero flower, and then look within it to see what the different colors are within that one flower, because so many flowers have, they'll have like a fine plum edging or like a vein that's running through it, and the stamens a different color, and there is an entire color palette usually within one one flower, and spin off of that to select your other ingredients. And definitely look for, so I'm always looking for interesting shapes in from the branches or the flower stems themselves. And this is another reason why why we grow rather than source from the market, because we want these stems that have interesting curving shapes. They're sort of forked, they're quite gnarly, they're quite witchy. There's, you know, lots of shape and texture within the stems themselves. So it's always looking to create movement, I think, and a sense of airiness and looseness, so that it looks as though you've just gathered it and it's very informal. Our guiding sort of principle is always bringing it back to the materials and honoring them and the way that they naturally grow in the garden and in the soil and on the plant. So it's a sort of realistic interpretation rather than an abstract interpretation of how those plants grow. And yeah, it's pulling out very shapely materials so that you can play with them and experiment, but also leaving a certain amount of negative space within between so that you can see things and see through, and you have sort of visual journeys. So it's not just a wall or a dome. It's a really interesting journey for the eye visually to travel through from front to back or from side to side. And there are all these really lovely little moments and details within it. So it's sort of a little botanical world, or like a miniature garden in a vase. So yeah, I would say look for a hero flower. Look for some interesting curving branches or shapes of the flower stems, and just go from there and experiment as much as possible.
Can I also add, know which vase you're going to use before you cut?
That's a good one.
Because then you know your stem lengths or the volume, you know, and then move it around once you've got it inside, you know, move it with the light, try it in different areas. Like if I do have flowers at home, which I'm having more and more, actually, we've been joking recently, but I'm like 10 years in, I'm like, flowers are really beautiful at home. But I'll move them through my house, you know, my little flat. I'll move them from one, you know, I'll put them in the bedroom at some points and my daughter's room, and you know, as they change and as the light changes, and be like, oh, I can enjoy this one arrangement in all these different places, and it looks slightly different depending on the colors and the light. So yeah, I think vases are also very important.
And that's kind of like sharing as well. Sharing the flower love around. I haven't heard of anyone doing that before. I like that.
Totally.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh, I love that. Just back to vases, are there any specific shapes of vases that you look for when you're shopping for a vase, or are there vases that are easier to work with or more difficult to work with? What do you like to work with?
Ooh.
Shopping. You said shopping. And I was
shopping. Yeah,
very good shopping. What type of vase shopping most tickles your fancy?
I love ceramics, usually, as opposed to glass. I just really love a very earthy material, and interesting glazes, and usually something that is complementary but pretty neutral, like soft greys or tobacco or oatmeal colors like that are very earthy. In terms of shape, so many different shapes. I'm so I love using lots of different things, so I don't have something that I just like keep returning to, but I do love so we use footed vessels a lot, especially for events, which are very elegant, and they sort of lift the flowers above the table and allow you to create these lovely moments where there are vines spilling down onto the tabletop and things like that. I love great big garden urn arrangements, so I love like working at scale and using things that are really big, and usually they can be quite ornate, actually, but they're often a sort of terracotta color, so they're quite like muted and earthy. And what else? Oh, I do actually really love just a very simple cylinder or like a beaker. We work with a ceramicist who we've been collaborating with for years and years, and we kind of come up with some ideas of shape, send him some sketches, and he makes some prototypes. And so our studio is kind of stocked now with our own kind of collaborative range of ceramics that we use for everything. And every vessel is designed for a particular type of arrangement. But I do really love just a tiny little, like little jar or beaker, or just a single stem vessel. Just it can be super simple. But I actually think you can kind of arrange in anything. Like if you can make something watertight. Oh, I do love. There's the arrangement I was talking about earlier, actually, at Surge Hill in the wicker vase. I love that vase.
That was from a charity shop.
I love the idea of working more in baskets. Something I'm really interested in exploring. Johnny just weaved. How do you say that? He did a basket weaving course.
And he wove a basket. Which we then stole, so we now have it in the studio.
Did he do it with reeds or something like that?
Did it with willow.
Oh, with willow. Oh.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful shape. Sort of an oval. It's really, really gorgeous. Anyway, we're going to try and do something in that.
But again, it's a natural material, which I think is really, it's really interesting to work from.
Yeah.
That's really fun. I've done some like curly willow making, making
like
baskets for Ikebana for very rough though.
I think it takes quite a long time to hone it as a skill.
That craft, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I'm gonna ask one more question before we wrap up, which is, what are your favorite other botanical books? Fiction or non-fiction? Flowers, plants, anything? I mentioned Constance Spry before.
Yes, Constance Spry. How to Do the Flowers.
Yeah, Party Flowers. She's done a seasonal series. They're all really great.
I'd say anything by Richard Maybe, who's a nature writer. Weeds is a great book of his. The Accidental Garden, that's Richard Maybe, isn't it? He's such a great writer. So accessible, so knowledgeable, you really get your facts sort of botanically, but he's also very accessible and quite funny. And so it makes something that could be quite academic and dry quite, I find it really enjoyable. I
just got a really great Ikebana book, actually. I can't remember the name of it. It's so annoying. I'll have to, can I make it to you? Yeah, to link, because I think it was published quite recently.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Really great. And lots of actually old Ikebana books that I've found on Amazon. But I can send you a list of titles because I think you can still get them. They're out of print, but
I'll let you prepare your list for the book club session, okay?
Yeah. Okay,
so get some
might be quite long.
Yeah. Oh, Bringing Nature Home.
Bringing Nature Home is an amazing book.
There's so many. Okay, we'll prepare a list.
Prepare a list. Okay. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I feel like I could stay on this call for hours, but we better not. And thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to the book club session.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah, can't wait. See you there.
Bye.